The Galactic Council chambers trembled with anger. Thousands of alien voices rose together, echoing like thunder through the colossal dome. Massive crystal spires glowed with blue fire above, pulsing in rhythm with the sound of fury. One by one, delegates from the oldest civilizations stood, their voices sharp with rage. They all demanded the same thing, the expulsion of humanity. Humans were unpredictable. Humans were dangerous. Humans were different. And tonight, the galaxy was ready to cast them out forever. But as the vote neared, something happened. Something no one expected. The Speaker of the Council froze mid-sentence. His voice cracked, his hands trembled, and his eyes widened with terror. He knew a truth that no one else dared to speak. The Grand Council chamber was unlike anything else in the galaxy. Carved from a hollowed moon, it stretched for kilometers, its walls lined with hovering platforms where alien delegates floated above the glowing floor. Holograms of their homeworlds shimmered behind them, each symbol a reminder of who they represented. At the very center stood the Speaker's Tower, a column of silver light reaching high into the dome. From here, the Speaker commanded order, or at least he tried to. Tonight there was no order. "Humanity is a plague," shouted Delegate Rax of the Vorn Dominion, his voice a guttural roar. His scaled body glistened beneath the chamber lights. Everywhere they go, chaos follows. They start wars, they twist alliances, they spread like fire through dry fields. If we allow them to remain in the Council, we sign our own death warrants. A chorus of agreement thundered from across the chamber. Delegate Sarah of the Yinar Collective hissed, her translucent body rippling with agitation. "The humans destroyed 2 Yinar fleets during the Krenner conflict. They call it defense. I call it brutality. They use war like a language. Enough! Remove them before they destroy us all." The chamber erupted with pounding fists, claws, and tentacles against their platforms. The noise shook the crystal spires above, sending blue light cascading like lightning across the dome. The Speaker of the Council, an ancient being of the Eliari species, raised his staff, its golden tip sparking with authority. "Order," he demanded, though his voice trembled. "Delegates, you will speak in turn." But they did not stop. From the Krath enclaves came the memory of human soldiers toppling tyrants no one else dared to challenge. From the Zothari Union came reports of humans colonizing worlds on the very edge of black holes, living where no sane species would. From the Shara Dominion came images of human fleets charging into impossible battles, winning where they should have died. Every accusation carried the same theme. Humanity did not follow the rules of the galaxy. And that terrified everyone. Delegate Vorun of the Arkan species spoke calmly, but his words cut deeper than the others. His people were long-lived, wise, and known for caution. Humans bend reality to their will. Where we calculate risk, they gamble. Where we retreat, they advance. Where we mourn defeat, they find victory in ashes. If such a race cannot be controlled, it must be cast out for the safety of all. The silence that followed was heavy, dangerous. Even the air seemed to hesitate. The Speaker lowered his eyes. His wrinkled hands gripped the staff tighter. He had seen countless wars, countless disputes, but never had the Council been so united in their hatred of one species. He raised the staff again. The chamber quieted at last. "The matter has been brought forth," the Speaker said slowly. "By request of 2/3 majority, a vote will be held. The question is simple. Shall humanity be expelled from the Galactic Council?" Ripple of satisfaction spread across the platforms. Delegates straightened, eager to raise their voices, but on the far edge of the chamber, in a small, dimly lit platform, sat the lone human representative, Ambassador Marcus Hale. He did not rise, he did not shout. He simply sat, his eyes calm, his hands folded, A single human against the fury of 1,000 worlds. Some aliens sneered at his silence. Others laughed. "See, even now, the human has no defense," hissed Delegate Serra. But Marcus Hale's silence was not weakness. It was patience. The speaker began to call the vote. Delegate Rax of the Vaughn Dominion, expel humanity. Delegate Serra of the Udna Collective, expel humanity. One by one, voices rose, each shouting the same verdict. The chamber grew heavier with every word. Humanity's fate was being sealed. Marcus Hale sat motionless. His heart pounded, but he showed no fear. The speaker moved down the list, his voice steady. But then, halfway through the roll call, his words faltered. His staff slipped slightly in his hand. The chamber noticed. "Speaker?" Delegate Voran asked. "Are you unwell?" The speaker's eyes widened, his mouth opening soundlessly. For a moment, he looked less like a leader and more like a man staring into the abyss. In the silence, the crystal spires above flickered. A low hum vibrated through the chamber. It was subtle, but unmistakable. Something ancient stirring. Something hidden. The speaker swallowed hard, forcing his voice steady. "Continue the vote," he ordered himself. But the tremor in his tone betrayed him. He knew something the others did not. Something he dared not speak aloud. As more votes were cast, Marcus Hale finally lifted his eyes. He studied the speaker carefully. The old alien avoided his gaze, shifting uncomfortably, as if afraid. Marcus leaned forward slightly, his voice calm, steady, carrying across the chamber. "Strange, isn't it?" he said. "Every world represented here calls for our expulsion. And yet, not one of you has spoken the real reason why you can't." The chamber went silent. The delegates shifted, their confidence cracking. Eyes turned toward the speaker. His hands gripped the staff so tightly that sparks danced across its surface. "Ambassador Hale," the speaker said sharply, "you will remain silent until the vote is concluded." Marcus smiled faintly. "Of course, Speaker, but then perhaps it is not me you fear speaking. Perhaps it is yourself." The words hung heavy in the chamber. For the first time, fear rippled through the council, not of humanity, but of the secret no one dared reveal. The vote continued, but the weight of the chamber shifted. Some delegates hesitated before speaking. Others glanced nervously toward the speaker, as if hoping for reassurance that never came. The blue crystal spires pulsed faster, their light stuttering, as if the chamber itself remembered something ancient and buried. Marcus Hale sat back in his chair. He said nothing more. He didn't need to. The seed of doubt was planted, and as the speaker finally raised his staff to declare the result, his voice cracked again. "Humanity," he began, his words trembling with dread, "cannot be expelled." The chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates shouted in confusion, rage, and fear, but Marcus Hale only smiled. The truth had not yet been spoken. But everyone in that chamber now understood one thing. Humanity's place in the galaxy was not as simple as they believed. The mystery had begun. The chamber of the Galactic Council remained in chaos long after the speaker's trembling words. Delegates shouted across the platforms, their voices clashing like storms, demanding answers the speaker refused to give. Humanity could not be expelled, he had said, but he offered no reason. The mystery spread like fire, and whispers followed the human ambassador long after he left the chamber in silence. But the truth was not buried forever. Deep beneath the council's moon-carved halls, in corridors few dared to enter, shadows spoke. Servants, aides, and archivists who had seen too much and understood too little shared fragments of a secret none of them were supposed to know. They spoke of a treaty, ancient and dangerous, hidden away in the vaults of history. A treaty that explained why humanity could never be cast out. Tahlir, a young aide of the Eliari, hurried through one of these forgotten corridors. His heart pounded as he replayed what he had overheard. He had been delivering reports when he stumbled into a closed chamber where senior archivists argued in hushed voices. He had heard the words clearly. Humanity was protected by something older than the Council itself, the Forbidden Treaty. They had silenced themselves when they noticed him, their eyes burning with warning, but the words had already carved themselves into his mind. He tried to dismiss it, telling himself he had misheard. Yet as he walked the dim corridors, the weight of what he had learned crushed him. Every race believed humanity was new to the Council, disruptive, reckless. Yet this treaty suggested otherwise. Could it be that humans were tied to the very birth of the Council, that the Council itself was built on a bargain with them? Tahlir's steps slowed when he passed a window that looked down on the chamber. Far below, delegates still roared with anger, their voices echoing even through the sealed walls. Most of them thought the speaker's hesitation was weakness. Few understood it was fear. Tahlir had seen that fear in the old Eliari's eyes. He had felt it when the chamber lights had flickered, as if something unseen stirred in response to the vote. The speaker had not lied. Humanity could not be expelled. The reason was written somewhere in that treaty, but where was it hidden? Tahlir's thoughts were interrupted as a cloaked figure appeared from the shadows of the hall. The aide stopped, startled, but the figure raised a hand slowly, a gesture of silence. The voice that followed was soft, low, and ancient. "You heard more than you should have, young one," Tahlir swallowed. "The treaty, it's real, isn't it?" The cloaked figure did not answer at first. Then, with a slow movement, the hood lowered, revealing the pale face of an Eliari elder, older even than the speaker. His eyes glowed faintly with a memory that stretched across centuries. Some truths are older than the Council itself. This one binds us all. Tahlir dared to ask, "Why does it bind us to them? To humans?" The elder's expression tightened. "Because without it, the Council would not exist. Humanity is woven into the foundation of our law. Long before your people, long before most who now sit in those chambers, there was an agreement. The treaty was signed in blood and fire, sealed so deep that even now few know of it. Break it, and the Council falls apart." The aide stepped closer, his voice trembling. "Then why is it hidden?" The elder's eyes flickered with sorrow. "Because the galaxy fears the truth. To know it is to remember the wars before the Council, to remember the power humanity once held, to remember why we swore never to rise against them again." A chill ran down Tahlir's spine. Wars before the Council, power no other species dared to challenge. He wanted to ask more, but the elder raised a hand. "Do not seek the treaty. Knowledge has a price, and some prices should never be paid." The elder turned and melted back into the shadows, leaving the young aide frozen in place. That night, as the chamber above still buzzed with anger, Tahlir could not sleep. The words gnawed at him. A treaty older than the Council, wars no one spoke of, humanity tied to the very birth of galactic law. If this was true, then the vote had been nothing more than theatre. Humanity's place had been secured long before the Council had even existed. Elsewhere, Ambassador Marcus Hale sat alone in his quarters. He had spoken little during the vote, letting the aliens rage, but he had seen the fear ripple through them. He had watched the speaker hesitate, seen his voice tremble. Marcus knew the treaty well, though he did not carry its text in his hands. No human did. But every human leader who took his post was told a fragment of the truth, enough to remind them that their people's survival in this council was not chance, but design. He stared out at the stars beyond the window, remembering the oath passed down to him. The words had been simple. Never let them forget why they cannot cast us out. But never let them know the full truth until the time is right. That time, he felt, was drawing closer. Across the galaxy, rumors began to spread, not just from Talier's whispers, but from other aides, guards, and archivists who had heard pieces of the argument in hidden halls. The word treaty passed through mouths cautiously like poison. No one spoke openly, but everyone seemed to know. Something ancient bound the Council to humanity. Something dangerous. Alien leaders grew restless. Some demanded investigations, but the speaker refused. Some called for the arrest of the human ambassador, but others hesitated, afraid of what would happen if they acted. The Council, so united in its hatred hours before, now found itself divided, not by humanity's actions, but by fear of the secret they did not understand. In the streets of Council worlds, citizens argued. Why were the humans spared when so many wanted them gone? Some protested, carrying banners demanding expulsion. Others whispered of omens, warning that the humans carried the blessing or curse of the ancients. Across entire star systems, the question spread, what was the Forbidden Treaty, and why did it protect the humans? In the days that followed, Talier found himself restless. The Elder's warning haunted him, but so did his own curiosity. He began slipping into archives, searching through ancient records. Most files were sealed, restricted even from Council aides, but he found fragments. Mentions of wars fought long before the Council, when stars burned under weapons no one now possessed. Mentions of warriors who did not yield, of humans standing against empires and leaving ruins in their wake. The fragments never gave full answers, only hints. But together, they painted a picture of a species too dangerous to erase, a species the galaxy had once tried to destroy and failed. The more he pieced together, the more he understood why the speaker had trembled. Humanity had been here before. Humanity had bled across these stars long before they joined the Council openly. And when the galaxy could not defeat them, it had been forced to make a bargain, the Forbidden Treaty. But what was promised, what was sworn, that remained hidden. One night, as Talier sorted through the fragments, he felt eyes watching him. He turned quickly, only to see the shadows of the archive stretch unnaturally. A voice whispered, not from a person, but from the very air. You search for things that are not yours to know. The lights flickered, just as they had during the vote. A low hum filled the chamber, vibrating through the stone walls. Talier stumbled back, fear chilling his blood. The whispers grew louder, circling him, though no one was there. He heard words not in his language, not in any language he knew, but he felt their meaning. The treaty is sealed in the bones of the Council. Break it, and the stars will burn again. When the light steadied, he was alone. Shaken, Talier fled the archives. He understood now why the Elder had warned him. The treaty was not just a secret of politics. It was alive, buried deep in the foundations of the Council, tied to something far greater than laws or alliances. To dig too deeply was to awaken it, and somewhere beyond the Council's reach, far across the stars, something stirred. Humanity had not asked for this protection. They had not begged for mercy. Long ago, they had forced the galaxy to sign in blood. And if the Council ever broke that oath, the galaxy would learn again why humans could never be expelled. The whispers of the Forbidden Treaty had begun, and with them, the slow unraveling of the Council itself. The Council chamber still shook. From whispers of the Forbidden Treaty, but the galaxy outside had already begun to shift. Rumors spread across star systems faster than light, carried by frightened voices and secret reports. The Council had tried to vote humanity out, but failed. The speaker's words still echoed, "Humanity cannot be expelled." No reason was given, and that silence only made the mystery stronger. On a quiet colony world at the far edge of Council space, life moved differently. The planet Luthen was small, its sky painted with 3 moons, its surface covered in wide plains and glittering rivers. It was a place where settlers traded, farmed, and lived away from the constant noise of politics. Few ships landed here, and even fewer left. It was a forgotten world, one where whispers from the council took months to arrive. But on one ordinary morning, something happened that would send shockwaves back to the heart of the galaxy. A man walked into the council outpost at the colony's capital. He looked like any human traveler, tall, lean, dressed in simple work clothes. His eyes were sharp but calm, his face weathered from a life beneath the sun. He carried no weapon, no documents, no badge of authority. He simply stepped through the doors of the alien-run outpost, as though he had business there. The Zathari officers at the desk barely looked up at first. They saw many settlers come and go. But when the man placed his hand on the registry panel, the screen flared brighter than it ever had. Symbols appeared across it, glowing red, before shifting into words none of them had seen before. The machine began to hum. Then it shut down completely. Confused, the officer glanced at the human. "Name?" he demanded. The man smiled faintly. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." Before the officer could react, the registry powered itself back on, but the name that appeared on the screen froze everyone in the outpost. It was not a name from the registry. It was a name from legend, Kieran Solus. The officer stumbled back. That name was impossible. It belonged to a man recorded in the Council's most ancient archives, a human warrior who had fought in the wars before the Council existed, a man who had died more than 10,000 years ago. Alarms rang. Officers scrambled. Some pulled weapons, though their hands shook. Others called for the outpost commander. But the human Kieran only raised his hands calmly, showing he meant no harm. "I am not your enemy," he said, "but it seems you recognize me." The outpost commander, an insectoid of the Venar species, arrived quickly, his chitin clicking. Nervously as he studied the human. "This is a trick," he hissed, "a fraud." Yet even as he said it, the outpost's DNA scanners finished their reading. The result was undeniable. The human standing before them was a perfect match to the genetic records stored in sealed archives. Records of a warrior who should not exist. Records of a man who had fought in battles older than the Council itself. The commander's claws trembled. "This cannot be. You died millennia ago." Kieran Solus tilted his head. "Perhaps I did. Perhaps I didn't. Time is strange when the galaxy refuses to forget." The officers exchanged panicked looks. Word of this could not stay hidden. The Council would know within days. The human did not resist when they placed him under guard. He walked calmly through the outpost halls, his eyes scanning the walls as if they were familiar. As if he had walked here long before these halls were even built. When the report reached the Council, chaos returned. The speaker listened in silence as the transmission played. The human's face appeared on the screen, and the chamber erupted. Delegates shouted, denied, cursed. Some claimed it was forgery. Others screamed that it was proof of the treaties. Curse! Ambassador Marcus Hale sat quietly once again, his expression calm but his thoughts racing. He knew the name. Every human leader was taught the name, though only as legend. Kieran Solus, the one who had led the final stand of humanity during the ancient wars, the one who forced the galaxy to sign the treaty. A man who had disappeared when peace was forged, his death never confirmed, and now here he was, alive. The speaker's voice cracked as he tried to calm the chamber. We must investigate this carefully. If this is true, then—" "Delegate," Rax roared, "if it is true, then humanity has tricked us all. They plant their warriors across time, waiting to strike." Delegate Sarah hissed, translucent body trembling. "This is an omen. The dead walk again. Humanity is cursed." But others spoke in hushed tones, fear in their eyes. "No, this is the proof. This is why we cannot expel them. The treaty was not just written in words, it was written in blood. His blood. The speaker gripped his staff tightly, but his hands shook. He remembered what he had been told as a young apprentice, that if ever the face of Kieran Solace returned, it would mean the treaty's warning had awakened. Meanwhile, on Luthen, Kieran remained calm in his cell. The outpost commander watched him with a mixture of fear and fascination. The human showed no signs of fear, no signs of confusion. When questioned, he answered only in riddles. "How are you alive?" the commander demanded. Kieran smiled faintly. Alive, dead, such words mean little when history refuses to end. The galaxy still owes a debt, and I am its reminder. The commander's mandibles clicked nervously. What debt? But the human only closed his eyes, as if listening to a voice no one else could hear. "You will learn soon enough." When night fell, the outpost trembled. Not from storms or earthquakes, but from something deeper. The ground beneath Luthen shivered as if something long buried stirred in its sleep. Lights flickered across the settlement. Some colonists whispered that the humans' arrival had awakened the planet itself. Back on the Council's homeworld, the chamber remained divided. Some demanded Kieran's immediate execution. Others argued he should be brought to the Council. At once, the speaker said nothing. His silence was answer enough. He was afraid. Marcus Hale finally spoke, his calm voice carrying across the chamber. "You see now, don't you? You see why you cannot cast us out. We are tied to this galaxy in ways you refuse to understand. You try to erase us, but we return. Again and again. The galaxy is built on our survival." The chamber fell silent. No one wanted to admit it. But the human ambassador was right. The Council's greatest fear was not humanity's unpredictability. It was their persistence, their refusal to vanish, their defiance of time itself. Kieran Solace was living proof of that, and somewhere, buried in ancient records and forgotten vaults, the rest of the truth waited to be revealed. The galaxy had tried to bury its past, but the past had risen, wearing the face of a man who should not exist. The Council's secret was unraveling, thread by thread. And the galaxy was about to remember why it had sworn never to stand against humanity again. The colony world of Luthen had never felt fear like this. At first, the settlers thought the trembling ground was nothing more than a natural quake. But when the shaking continued through the night, when the rivers rippled without wind, when the stars above seemed to flicker as if disturbed by something unseen, they knew it was no ordinary tremor. Something old, something buried, was stirring beneath their feet. In the outpost cell, Kieran Solace sat with his back against the wall, calm, as if he had been waiting for this very moment. The commander burst into the room, mandibles clattering in panic. "What have you done, human?" Kieran's eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. "Not what I've done. What was always waiting." The ground shook again, stronger this time. Dust fell from the ceiling. Outside, sirens wailed. Colonists screamed as structures collapsed, and the 3 moons above the horizon glowed strangely, casting shadows that seemed to twist and move on their own. Then, from deep beneath the plains, a sound like thunder rolled upward, shaking the air. But it was no storm. It was the sound of something breaking free. The settlers ran to the plains to see cracks splitting open across the earth. Out of the fissures came light, blue, white, blinding. The ground heaved, and slowly, impossibly, something vast began to rise. The colonists froze, unable to believe what they were seeing. Buried beneath the world, hidden for millennia, a massive structure began to lift itself from the soil. Its surface gleamed with scars of age, yet it still pulsed with power. A warship, a human warship. It was like no ship any of the colonists, or even the Council, had ever seen. Its design was sharp, brutal, almost predatory. Unlike the smooth, elegant vessels of the Council races, this craft was a machine of war, made for one purpose only. It stretched for kilometers, its hull marked with strange sigils that burned with ancient light. The settlers fell silent, their fear giving way to awe. The galaxy had forgotten such ships ever existed, but here, beneath their very feet, one had slept. Inside the outpost, alarms screamed as scans of the rising vessel filled the monitors, energy levels beyond comprehension, weapons arrays that should have been impossible, a reactor signature so old, yet still burning as if newly lit. The commander turned on Kieran, trembling. This is your doing. That ship, it's human." Kieran rose slowly, his shadow stretching across the wall. "It is not my doing, it is my legacy. When the war ended, when the treaty was signed, we buried them. Not destroyed. Buried. Because the galaxy begged us to, because even victory terrified you." The commander backed away, disbelief flooding his features. No, this cannot be real. Such a ship could burn worlds. Why would anyone leave such a thing behind?" Kieran's voice lowered, carrying the weight of centuries. "Because we promised never to use them again. Because the galaxy swore it would honor peace. But peace never lasts. The day would come when the stars would need a reminder. That day has come." Above the plains, the warship finally tore free from the soil, with a sound like the planet itself crying out. It hovered, in silence, colossal and menacing, blocking out the moons. The settlers fell to their knees, unable to comprehend the power hanging above them. Back at the Council's core world, the chamber shook with chaos once more as reports arrived. Holograms of the warship flickered above the delegates' heads, its sheer size dwarfing anything the Council fleets had ever built. Delegates shouted, their voices shrill with fear. "This is why they cannot be expelled." One screamed, "This is what they hid. They buried weapons beneath our worlds." Another accused, "This is betrayal." "No," Ambassador Marcus Hale said, his calm voice cutting through the storm. "We buried them beneath our worlds. At your request, you all knew what we were capable of, and you begged us to lay our weapons down. And we did. For millennia we did. But you cannot bury truth forever." The speaker's hands shook as he gripped his staff. He knew the records, though he had never dared believe them. The treaty had demanded more than words. It had demanded the burial of humanity's greatest weapons, not destroyed, not dismantled, buried. Left sleeping, hidden in soil and stone, guarded by silence. Now one had awakened, and worse, the presence of Kieran Solace. Alive, impossible, walking among them, meant this was not an accident. It was a return. The council chamber erupted in terror, but Marcus leaned forward, his eyes sharp as blades. "You asked for this, you begged for this. And now you see why humanity cannot be cast out. The stars themselves will not allow it." Back on Luthen, the warship hovered silently, but the sky burned with its awakening. Its reactor flared, sending waves of energy across the plains. Communications died. Power grids collapsed. The settlers huddled in fear as their world bent beneath. The machine's presence. In the outpost, Kieran turned to the commander, his voice heavy with finality. "The Council tried to bury their fear, but fear always finds the light. That ship is not just metal, it is memory. And memory cannot be erased," the commander whispered almost to himself. "What happens now?" Kieran's eyes glowed brighter. "In the dark. Now the galaxy remembers what it chose to forget, and once memory returns, war is never far behind." The warship began to move, slowly, impossibly, as if testing the skies again after sleeping for ages. It turned, its weapons arrays glowing faintly, scanning the heavens as though searching for an enemy long gone. But the galaxy was full of enemies, and the Council knew. This was only the beginning. The galaxy had not seen fear spread this fast in centuries. When the warship rose from the soil of Luthen, news traveled like wildfire. Every relay station, every trading port, every council world echoed with the same whispered word, human. And though the council tried to silence the reports, fear cannot be silenced. It grows, it spreads. On the colony, the settlers watched in terror as the colossal ship remained above the plains. It did not move toward the stars. It did not fire. It simply lingered, its engines humming with an ancient, unsettling rhythm, as though the machine itself were alive and waiting. The sky seemed darker under its shadow, and the air carried a weight that pressed down on every living being. In the council chamber, arguments boiled into chaos. Delegates shouted over one another, demanding answers, demanding retaliation, demanding something, anything that could erase the image of the ship from their minds. "This cannot be allowed to stand," the Voro delegate shrieked, his spines rattling with fear. "If the humans hid one of these, how many more sleep beneath their worlds? Then strike now," another roared. "Destroy it before it awakens further. If humanity thinks it can use this weapon to threaten us, let us show them." The speaker slammed his staff against the floor. The chamber silenced. His voice trembled, but his words were clear. "We cannot destroy what cannot be destroyed." A stillness fell across the chamber. Every delegate stared, eyes wide, waiting for explanation. Ambassador Marcus Hale rose slowly, his presence cold and commanding. He looked at each of them, his voice carrying calm authority. "You all know what that ship is. Even if you pretend you do not, you know what was buried. You know why." The speaker's hands shook as he forced himself to speak the words none wished to hear. "During the war, when humanity fought the coalition, we demanded their surrender. But their leaders gave us something else. They gave us a promise. They laid down their greatest weapons, not destroyed but hidden, sealed beneath worlds, with coordinates burned into treaty stone. We accepted because we feared what would happen if they resisted. We accepted because even victory was not enough." Gasps and growls filled the chamber. Some delegates shouted denials, others cursed, others demanded the records be read aloud. But Marcus spoke again, cutting through the storm. "You all agreed. You all signed. You begged humanity to bury its weapons because you feared what would happen if they were unleashed, and humanity, against its nature, obeyed. For centuries we obeyed. But now something has changed, and the ground itself has remembered." The words rippled across the chamber like thunder. The delegates leaned back, some pale, some furious. None could argue. On Luthen, the settlers cowered as the warship began to move again. Slowly, almost lazily, its massive bulk shifted. Its weapons arrays pulsed, scanning the horizon. Some said they heard a voice in their minds, like whispers carried on static. Others swore they saw lights within the hull, figures moving inside as though the ship was not empty. The local militia tried to approach. Fighters rose into the sky, their engines glowing brightly, but the warship did not fire. It simply turned its guns, slowly, deliberately, until the militia pilots felt their hands freeze on their controls. They could not move closer. They could not even breathe. The ship was not attacking, but it was warning. At the outpost, the alien commander faced Kieran Solace once more. His mandibles clattered nervously. "This ship, this relic, if it is truly yours, then control it. Stop this madness." Kieran's eyes glowed faintly as he looked to the window where the ship loomed. "It was never meant to be controlled by one man, not even by me. It is a sentinel. It was left to sleep until the stars were ready to remember. Now it has woken on its own, and when a sentinel wakes, it does so for a reason." The commander's voice broke. "Then it will bring war." Kieran's expression hardened. War is already here. The ship is not the threat. The threat is coming, and this is the galaxy's only warning. The ground rumbled once more, but this time it was not the warship, it was something else. Across the colony skies, long shapes entered orbit, dark vessels with hulls that shimmered like oil. They were not council ships. They were not human ships. They were something older, something hungrier. The settlers screamed as alarms blared. Across the outpost, the council fleet, already stretched thin, scrambled to intercept. Marcus Hale received the reports in the chamber and felt the weight of inevitability sink into his bones. The Dravari, he whispered. The name spread through, the council chamber like fire. Old legends, old enemies, the species banished to the edges of the galaxy, long thought extinct. Predators of stars, destroyers of civilizations. If they had returned now, if they had chosen this moment. The speaker's voice cracked with dread. Then humanity did not awaken the ship. Marcus Hale's eyes burned with grim truth. The ship awakened itself. It felt them coming. On Luthen, the settlers watched as the sky lit with fire. Dravari ships descended like spears of darkness, tearing into the atmosphere. Council frigates rose to meet them, but the battle was short and brutal. The Dravari tore through them as though they were made of paper, their weapons leaving nothing but burning husks in orbit. The settlers fled, but there was nowhere to run. The Dravari did not come for conquest. They came to consume. Worlds, fleets, lives, it did not matter. To them, the galaxy was nothing but fuel. And then, as the Dravari closed in on the colony, the human warship moved. For the first time in thousands of years, its engines roared, fully awake, splitting the air with deafening thunder. Its hull blazed with light, ancient symbols glowing like fire. The settlers fell to the ground as the machine rose higher, blotting out the stars. A single beam of energy erupted from its forward cannon. The blast tore across the sky, ripping through 3 Dravari vessels in one shot. Where there had been ships, there was now only fire and silence. The colonists screamed, not in fear, but in awe. The ship had not just defended itself, it had defended them. Kieran stood at the window, his eyes reflecting the inferno in the sky. "Now you see," he whispered. "This is why we were never expelled, not because of power alone, but because the galaxy knew one day it would need us again." The commander stared, trembling. "If more of these ships exist, if humanity awakens them, then nothing will stand in their way." Kieran's expression was unreadable. That is what the Council fears most. Not that humanity will destroy them, but that humanity will save them, and they will never admit how much they need us. In the council chamber, chaos erupted as reports of the Dravari attack spread. Some demanded humanity release all their buried war machines at once. Others screamed that it was too dangerous, that awakening them would doom the galaxy. But Marcus Hale stood alone, his voice rising above the storm. "The Dravari are here. They will not stop. They will not listen. You want to know why humanity cannot be expelled? Because the stars themselves have chosen their defenders, and whether you like it or not, that is us." Silence fell across the chamber. Every delegate knew the truth, though none wished to speak it. Humanity had buried its weapons for peace, but now the galaxy's survival might depend on digging them back up. And above Luthen, the Sentinel ship turned its guns to the sky, its reactor blazing brighter than the moon's. For the first time in ages, the galaxy saw what humans had always known. Sometimes peace must sleep, but war never dies. The Dravari screamed through the heavens. The Sentinel answered with fire, and the galaxy held its breath, realizing that the secret reason humanity could never be expelled was because without them, everything else would burn. The flames of the first battle still burned in the skies. Of Luthen, when the settlers realized the truth. The Dravari were not invaders in the traditional sense. They were devourers. They did not send demands. They did not announce their presence. They descended like hunger itself, stripping fleets and worlds bare. And only one thing had slowed them: the Sentinel ship. Its awakening had been a storm. Its weapons, untouched for millennia, had shredded the Dravari with terrifying ease. Yet its silence afterward was even more haunting. For once the skies cleared, the ship simply hovered there, watching, waiting, as if measuring the galaxy's worth. The settlers fell to their knees. The council ships that had survived limped back into orbit, broken and humiliated. The Dravari were still out there, gathering, circling like wolves beyond the tree line. And every being in the system knew, without that ship, they would already be ash. The council chamber reeled with panic. Delegates screamed across the floor, demanding impossible answers. "More will come," the Voro delegate shrieked, claws rattling against his console. That was a vanguard, barely a taste of their swarm. If they strike the core worlds, no fleet can hold them. "They must be stopped at the edge," another shouted, his scaled crest flashing red. But with what? What weapon exists that can burn through them before they consume us all? The chamber fell into uneasy silence. All eyes turned to Marcus Hale. The ambassador stood tall, his face grim, his voice carrying the weight of memory. There was a promise, long ago. Humanity gave it willingly. It was written into treaty stone. Perhaps you have all forgotten it. "We have not." The speaker leaned forward, his voice shaking. "What promise?" Marcus's eyes darkened. "That if the galaxy ever faced extinction, if enemies returned that no council world could fight, humanity would rise again, not as conquerors, not as outcasts, but as the final shield. We called it the Sentinel Oath." Murmurs spread like ripples. Some delegates cursed under their breath, others demanded records be shown, but deep down they all knew. They had hidden from that truth for centuries because it frightened them. The Voro delegate hissed. "And what price comes with this oath?" "Humanity never gives without taking." Marcus's reply was like steel. "The price is survival. Do you truly wish to argue over politics when death already knocks at your gates?" On Luthen, the warship stirred again. Its engines pulsed with light. Settlers claimed they felt vibrations in their bones, as though the machine was not just metal, but alive and listening. Kieran Solis stood at the outpost's command deck, watching the sky. The alien commander beside him trembled, his mandibles clicking nervously. If this Sentinel Oath is true, how many more of these ships exist? Kieran's gaze did not leave the warship. Enough to end empires. Enough to save or destroy. Everything you know. That is why they were buried. That is why humanity chained its own hands. Because even we feared what we had built. The commander swallowed hard. Then why release them now? Kieran turned at last, his eyes cold fire. Because the galaxy has no choice. The Dravari will not stop, and neither will we. The settlers whispered stories of the ship like prayers. They called it the Guardian, the Last Blade, the Sentinel of Ash. Some feared it, others worshipped it. But all knew one thing: it was theirs only because humanity allowed it. The Council dispatched more fleets to Luthen, but not to fight the Dravari. Their ships gathered around the colony as if to cage the Sentinel warship itself, weapons trained nervously on its hull. The delegates argued the humans could not be trusted, that once the threat was ended, humanity might keep their war machines awake and turn them on everyone else. Marcus Hale listened to the whispers, the threats, the fear. He knew what they wanted. They would demand humanity destroy the Sentinel after it had served its purpose. They would demand humans bury themselves once more. And this time, they might try to force it. But what none of them understood was that the decision no longer rested in the Council's hands. The Sentinels had awakened themselves. On the edge of the system, the Dravari returned. First came their scouts, vast shadows gliding through the void. Then came their harvesters, massive ships that latched onto council wrecks and tore them apart like carrion birds. And finally came their armada. Dozens, then hundreds of ships, spreading across the stars like a plague. The council fleet moved to intercept. Their formation was tight, their ships gleaming, but against the Dravari swarm, they were nothing more than a fragile wall before a tidal wave. The Sentinel warship moved before any order was given. Its cannons lit the darkness, carving through the swarm with precision. Every shot struck true, tearing monstrous vessels apart, as though the galaxy itself guided its aim. The Dravari screamed through the void, their strange voices rattling through comms, not words, but pure hunger. They swarmed the Sentinel, latching onto its hull, pouring fire into its shields. The settlers watching from Luthen wept in terror, thinking it would fall. But the warship did not fall. Its hull glowed brighter, the symbols across its frame pulsing like veins of fire. And then its shields expanded outward in a sudden surge, shattering the swarm clinging to its frame. The blast was like a star being born. Every Dravari ship within reach burned, their husks drifting silently into the abyss. On the ground, Kieran whispered under his breath, "It remembers. Even after millennia, it remembers." The alien commander stared in horror. "Remembers what?" Kieran's answer was almost a whisper. "War." But even as the Sentinel carved through the swarm, Marcus Hale received a message from the deep archives of Earth. A signal older than any delegate in the chamber. One that had been locked away until the moment the oath was needed. It was not just one Sentinel. The coordinates were there, hidden beneath barren moons, lifeless rocks, dead worlds no one had cared to colonize. More ships, hundreds, each one a guardian buried in silence, waiting for the galaxy's darkest hour. Marcus stared at the data, his hands trembling. If they awoke them all, the Dravari would be stopped. The galaxy would be saved, but the Council's fears would also come true. Humanity would hold the most terrifying fleet in existence. The choice weighed heavy. Break the oath and let the galaxy burn, or fulfill it and awaken an army that might never sleep again. The speaker looked to him, desperate. "Ambassador Hale, what will your people do?" Marcus met his gaze, his voice quiet but firm. "What we promised. We will stand where no one else can." On Luthen, the Sentinel drove the swarm back, its cannons blazing like suns. But the Dravari kept coming. More ships than anyone could count. It was only the beginning. Kieran Solas stood in silence, his eyes reflecting the fire in the sky. He knew what came next. Humanity's oath had been forgotten by the galaxy, but not by the humans, never by the humans. The settlers prayed the Sentinel would not fall. The Council feared what would happen if it did not. And the Dravari pressed closer, hungry, endless. The forgotten oath echoed through the stars once more. Humanity would rise, but the galaxy did not yet understand. When humanity rose, it was never just to fight. It was to change the very fate of the stars. The Sentinel flared brighter, its guns tearing holes into the dark. And for the first time in millennia, the galaxy remembered why humans could never truly be expelled. Because when extinction came knocking, it was their hands, scarred, bloody, unyielding, that stood at the door. And the Dravari, ancient predators of the void, howled in fury as the Sentinel answered with fire. The war over Luthen was not won. The Sentinel ship, mighty as it was, fought alone against an endless tide. Each blast tore dozens of Dravari apart, but for every one destroyed, two more slipped through the void. Their swarm was infinite, a crawling shadow consuming everything in its path. The Council fleet, desperate to prove its worth, threw itself into the battle. Their ships flared and vanished in bursts of fire, dissolving against the swarm like sparks in a storm. The delegates watching from distant chambers whispered in horror. If this was only the vanguard, then nothing could hold back the full force of the Dravari. Nothing except the humans' promise. Marcus Hale stood in the command chamber, the secret message still burning in his hands. It was more than a transmission. It was a call, buried in the foundations of humanity's exile, a message written for one purpose only, to summon the fleet. He stared at the coordinates, his heart pounding. Hidden beneath forgotten moons, sleeping under the crust of barren planets, drifting in silence inside hollowed asteroids, hundreds of sentinel ships, each as terrible as the one now tearing the swarm apart over Luthen. The speaker's voice cracked with terror. "Ambassador Hale, you cannot mean to unleash them all." Marcus raised his head slowly. "If we do not, then your worlds will burn. Your people will feed the swarm. The Dravari will not stop, but neither will we." The chamber erupted in chaos. Some shouted that humanity would enslave the galaxy. Others demanded the coordinates be sealed, erased, forgotten. A few, those who had seen the Dravari devour their homes, fell silent, their faces pale with realization. They understood. There was no other choice. On Luthen, Kieran Solis watched the Sentinel ship unleash fire across the skies. His voice was calm, but his words struck harder than the thunder outside. "This is only one. Imagine 100. The alien commander beside him recoiled. "That would not be defense. That would be dominion." Kieran turned, his eyes hard as steel. "Dominion is not what you should fear. You should fear what happens if we do nothing." The swarm pressed closer. The Sentinel fought like a god reborn, but its shields flickered now. The endless waves scraped against its armor. For all its power, it was still alone. Then in the deep silence between stars, the call went out. Marcus Hale's voice carried across encrypted channels, across satellites and relays buried in forgotten systems. His words were simple, but they carried the weight of an oath older than any council record. "Sentinel Protocol! Initiate!" The galaxy shifted. On a dead moon at the edge of nowhere, the surface cracked. Dust lifted into the void as an ancient hull broke free, its engines coughing fire for the first time in 20 millennia. Symbols long buried ignited across its frame, answering the call. On a shattered asteroid, hidden deep within, another warship stirred. Its cannons hummed with power, its shields rising like a reborn sun. It lifted from the rock as if the void itself made way for it. On the frozen husk of a planet forgotten. By every star map, something vast emerged from beneath the ice. A sentinel dreadnought, its frame colossal, dwarfing any council fleet. Its eyes, if they could be called eyes, glowed with fire. One by one across the void, the dead stars gave up their guardians. 100 worlds shook. 100 ships rose. The fleet was awakening. Settlers on Luthen looked up at the night sky as beacons flared across distant constellations. Dozens, then hundreds of light trails burned through the heavens as the sentinels came online. The people wept openly. Some fell to their knees. Some screamed in fear, for this was not just salvation, it was revelation. On council worlds, panic erupted. Citizens stared at skies filled with fire, wondering if the end had come from the Dravari or from the humans. Senators locked chambers. Armies prepared in silence. No one trusted what was being born in the dark, but in the void, the swarm felt it first. The Dravari reeled. Their endless chorus of hunger cracked with something new. Confusion, fear. They felt the return of the enemy that had once broken them before history itself had memory. The sentinel on Luthen's sky brightened, its weapons singing louder, as if strengthened by its brothers rising across the galaxy. And then, the first of the fleet arrived. Through the chaos of battle, 3 more sentinels entered orbit, their engines burning white-hot, their frames vast and terrible. Without a word, they opened fire. Their beams carved through the swarm like light through glass. Entire clusters of Dravari ships burst apart, scattered into ash. The Council fleet faltered in awe. Soldiers stopped firing, their hands shaking as they watched the humans' promise unfold. Kieran whispered, almost reverent. "The fleet has awakened." The alien commander collapsed into his chair, trembling. "Then the galaxy will never be the same." He was right, because the Sentinels were not fighting only to protect Luthen. Their course was already charted. Their eyes, if such things could be said of machines, were turned outward, to the stars where the swarm bred, to the black worlds where the Dravari spawned. The oath was clear. Humanity had promised to rise if the galaxy faced extinction. That meant not merely holding the line, it meant striking until no threat remained. The Speaker of the Council slammed his fist against the console, his voice breaking through the chaos of the chamber. "This is madness. If humanity unleashes its fleet unchecked, then even if the swarm falls, the Council will fall next." Marcus Hale's reply was ice and fire combined. "Better to face human steel than Dravari teeth. One we can reason with, the other only hungers." The chamber silenced, because even the fiercest of humanity's enemies could not deny the truth. On Luthen, the 4 sentinels fought as one, their cannons weaving patterns of destruction, their shields overlapping like wings of fire. The swarm broke against them, scattered into drifting wrecks. For the first time in living memory, the Dravari retreated. Their endless hunger recoiled from the flame it could not consume. The settlers cried out in triumph, their voices echoing across the colony. For them, it was not just survival, it was proof that legends were true. Humanity's guardians were real. The oath was alive, but Kieran Solis did not smile. He watched the retreating swarm with cold calculation. They will return, stronger. They always return. The alien commander looked at him, despairing. "Then what hope do we have?" Kieran's eyes followed the sentinels as they turned, aligning their courses toward the stars. His voice was low, almost like a prayer. "Hope has awakened, but so has fear. And once the fleet is fully gathered, no power in this galaxy will control what happens next." In the silence that followed, the settlers, the Council, even the Dravari, all understood a single truth. The galaxy was no longer theirs to shape. The fleet had awakened, and with it, the shadow of humanity's forgotten empire stretched once more across the stars. The Dravari had stirred something older, something far deadlier than themselves. And as the sentinels vanished into the void, chasing the swarm back into its dark nests, the Council finally realized the cost of summoning them. Survival had a price, and the price was humanity unleashed. The stars were no longer silent. Every corner of the galaxy shook as the human fleet emerged from exile. One by one, the sentinels lit the void like a second dawn. Their engines carved fire across black skies, their cannons whispered in a language of destruction, and their shields shone like walls no storm could break. For the first time in centuries, the Dravari swarm retreated, not because they had been defeated, they had never known defeat, but because something older and more terrible had risen against them. Something they remembered. The swarm had memory buried in its collective mind. Long ago, when the galaxy still burned from its birth, the Dravari had tasted human steel, and that memory was not hunger, it was fear. On Luthen, the settlers stared at the skies as the swarm broke apart. What had been certain extinction dissolved into impossible salvation. 4 sentinel warships shielded the colony, but in the distance, trails of fire revealed dozens more arriving. Children who had grown up under the shadow of fear pointed to the heavens, their voices full of awe. To them, these were not machines, they were gods. But in the council chamber, awe curdled into terror. Delegates argued, voices rising like thunder. Some demanded humanity be embraced as saviors. Others shouted that the fleet was a weapon too. Dangerous to exist. The speaker slammed his fist against the table, his face pale and sweating. Do you not see? Today they fight the swarm. Tomorrow they may decide the galaxy belongs to them. Marcus Hale stood tall, his voice cutting through the storm. And if they hadn't risen, you would already be dust beneath the swarm. You argue about tomorrow, while today you still breathe only because of us. The chamber fell into silence, but the silence was poisoned. No one denied the truth, but no one trusted it either. Far from the council's bickering, the fleet gathered. 100 sentinels now burned through the void, aligning into formations not seen for 20,000 years. Their AI cores awoke fully, their ancient codes singing together like a choir of steel. They did not speak in words, yet every mind watching them felt it. Judgment had come. Kieran Solace stood aboard the command platform on Luthen, his eyes fixed on the stars where the fleet massed. His voice was calm, but his words carried weight. The oath has been honored. The fleet will not stop until the swarm is ash beneath the stars. The alien commander beside him trembled. And when the swarm is gone, what then? Kieran's gaze did not move from the horizon. Then the galaxy must decide if it can live under the shadow of what it begged to awaken. The first counterstrike came swiftly. The sentinels moved together, their engines igniting in unison. The void bent as they accelerated beyond the speed of thought, their course set for the Dravari spawning worlds. They were not defending anymore. They were hunting on the edge of a black sun. The swarm massed in numbers beyond imagination. Trillions of chittering vessels darkened the system, their hive minds screaming in hunger. No fleet had ever survived. Their onslaught, but no fleet had ever been this one. The sentinels arrived in silence, 100 warships aligned, shields overlapped, cannons charged until the stars themselves trembled. Then the void tore open, the first volley shattered entire. Swarms. Dozens of hive-ships split apart in fire, their remains scattering into orbit. The Dravari roared in fury, unleashing a tidal wave of drones. They crashed against the sentinel wall and broke. The sentinels did not falter. They moved with perfect precision, each one covering the others, their firepower weaving into storms of annihilation. Entire planets infested by the swarm burned beneath orbital bombardment. The Dravari screamed across the void, but no scream could stop what was coming. World by world, the swarm collapsed. Council fleets watching from distant systems fell into stunned silence. Generals who had commanded wars all their lives realized they were not witnessing a battle. They were witnessing extinction. Marcus Hale's voice carried over the encrypted channels. You asked for humanity's answer. This is it. Not words, not treaties. Wrath. Back in the council chamber, whispers spread like fire. Some senators wept openly, unable to believe the swarm was finally breaking. Others whispered of dread, because a fleet that could erase the swarm could erase them as well. The speaker bowed, his head into his hands. We called them back. We thought them broken. Instead, we have unleashed a storm that even the swarm could not devour. On the battlefield, the Dravari fought until nothing remained. Their endless hunger drove them to throw body after body into the storm. But the storm did not bend. It consumed. The sentinels pressed onward. 10,000 hive-ships destroyed. Worlds sterilized. The swarm that had haunted the galaxy for ages was broken in less than a year, and then came silence. The last of the Dravari fell, their hive mind flickering out like a dying flame. The galaxy trembled in the quiet that followed, unable to grasp what had been done. The swarm was gone, but peace did not come. The sentinels did not power down. They did not scatter or fade. They gathered tighter and stronger, as if awaiting the next command. Kieran Solis stood on Luthen's surface, watching their formation across the skies. His voice was low, but it carried like thunder. The oath was to rise when extinction came. The swarm is gone, but the oath does not end. The fleet still waits. The alien commander's voice cracked. Waits. For what? Kieran turned, his eyes colder than the void. For humanity's decision. Marcus Hale stood before the council. The fate of the galaxy balanced on his words. You begged us for salvation. We gave it. Now you tremble at the price. But understand this, humanity has returned. You cannot bury us again. You cannot chain what you woke. The galaxy is no longer yours alone. From this moment on, it is ours. The chamber erupted into chaos, voices shouting, some pleading, some cursing. But deep down, they all knew the truth. Humanity's fleet had answered the call. The swarm was gone, but the galaxy would never be the same, because in saving it, humanity had shown what it truly was. Not prey, not allies. Predators returned. The council, the colonies, every world under every star understood one thing in that silence. The war with the swarm was over. The age of humanity had begun.